month and year, and also select high school graduate programs. In the next section, please select at least one school of interest from the drop-down menu. If you are unsure about where you want to go, please select the case for you. Please note this question is just to gauge your interest. Selecting these schools does not commit you to any. The unchecked box below should only be checked if there was an interruption in your KPS attendance or your KPS presence. In the case that there was, please check the box and provide a brief explanation below. Then you will provide your signature and hit next. This will take you to our pathway survey. Filling out this general information will help us better assist you with your promise journey. And that's how you fill out your Counties and Promise application. If you have any further questions, please contact the Counties and Promise office.
All right, so this is a sample of the certificate that students will receive once they have completed their application and it has been approved. This is the certificate that will come in the mail. This certificate just indicates the percentage of the promise that the student will receive or that the student is eligible for. It also serves as a reminder to get that special SAF form in so that the check can be cut for whatever tuition expense is. There's one more video and then.
My name is Max Hoffman, and I'm the Promise Pathway Coach at Illinois. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to fill out the Scholarship Acceptance Form, otherwise known as SAF. You fill out your SAF after you've been accepted into your school. You'll also need to have registered your Counties and Promise account and completed your Promise application prior to submitting your SAF. To fill out your SAF, go to countiesandpromise.com. Click Account Login in the top right. Once you're at the login screen, enter the email and password that you created. Once you're logged in, find the Forms tab on the application. From there, the Scholarship Acceptance Form will be the second one on the list. Once you find the SAF, click Start Form to begin filling it out. The SAF is a signed agreement between you, the Promise, and your school of choice. We receive your grades and some personal information in order for us to cover your tuition. On the SAF, all the spaces marked with an asterisk are required to be filled out in order to submit it. On the SAF, select your school of choice, your start date, and your student identification number given to you by your school. At this point, you'll need to already have the student ID number assigned to you by your post-secondary institution officials. This can traditionally be found in your acceptance letter from your school or by contacting the admissions office. We encourage everyone to use contact information that matches the full address they use on their college application. Once you input the required information on your SAF, you will sign the button using your finger or your mouse and click Next to continue on to the START survey. The information submitted on the START survey is all confidential and highly encouraged so that we may continue to support you during and after your post-secondary education. After the survey, you may submit your SAF. To confirm your submission was successful, go back to the Forms page and to the right of the Scholarship Acceptance Form, it should have the date that it was submitted. You can also select the tab that says your submitted form, and you should see the Scholarship Acceptance Form there. And that's how you submit your Scholarship Acceptance Form. If you have any other questions, please talk to the pathway coach at your high school.
Good evening. I'm Bob Jordan. I'm the Executive Director of Counties and Promise. No, all jokes aside, it's great. I've been with the Promise since it began. As I mentioned earlier in the slide presentation, we now serve over 8,000 students and distributed over $200 million in scholarships to the community. And for me, the special treat is I have staff now of 21 team players with the elements of promise, and over 2/3 of them are promise along Mark and the senior tonight. And I think father, actually, so the first thing I want to talk about here is in 2015 we added a group of 14 private colleges to the Promise schools that students would use for Promise. And Promise works just slightly differently. When the donors agreed to let them participate in the Promise, they basically said the only way they would do that is if they would make their institutions as affordable as the public institutions. So we have an agreement with all the MCA schools that we will pay the same tuition rate as the University of Michigan School of Liberal Arts. And they will make up the difference in tuition and fees and free financial aid. That gets a little confusing. So we have a little chart here to help explain it. So it's very simple. If you get 100% of the promise, in this example, we have a school with $30,000 in tuition. Current rate at the University of Michigan is $18,309. We will pay that. The MCA institution will pay the balance of that in free aid. Where this really works out is for the students who don't get 100%. So in this example, with a student who's eligible for 75%, instead of paying 25% of the $30,000, you're only responsible for 25%. So in this case, that's $4,500. Gay College, where we now have over 100 students, the tuition and fees there, I believe, are close to $60,000. We pay $18,000. They make up the balance through financial aid. If we had to pay 25%, $60,000, that would be $15,000. This agreement saves students at least $10,000. Our agreement mentioned $2,000 that they is making. A couple of cautions about private schools. One, it's a very positive thing. Private schools are extremely interested in having our students attend their schools. They work harder to recruit than any of the state schools. However, all the private schools are residential. So even if you go to K College, which is in Kalamazoo, they're required to live on campus. So there are room and board fees that are associated with attending. Those are not covered by the promise or the agreement. So it certainly makes those schools a lot more affordable, and you still have the same expense if you went to any of the four-year institutions. They can use any free aid to make their match. Most of them will not use the Pell Grant. They will reserve that to help the main thing that if you're interested in one of the MCA schools, we need to get these forms in early so that when they make an offer to you, the promise is on your offer. If you get a financial aid offer from one of the private colleges before your promise is applied, they will recalculate aid. This is true for any of the schools, actually. They will recalculate your aid based on what it is in the promise. Now, our belief is that every student will get the maximum amount of free financial aid that the private schools have actually given. that they can, because the promise is anyway, if you have questions about that, coaches, glad to explain. All right, what we got here next? Okay, payment. Yeah. So the good news is we're paying. The bad news for the students is we're not paying you, we're paying the schools. So any plans you have to take these funds and get a new car or some game system or I don't know, take a road cruise or something that you're gonna have to figure out. The payment process. We actually do not pay schools until after the semester is started. However, students, you should see your promise award on your account before every semester starts. We have been doing this for 17 years now. Like I said, we've paid out over $200 million. The schools know we're going to pay. So they will put the scholarship on your account before the semester starts. You will pay at some later point in time, but they will credit your account as if you already paid. If you don't see your promise on your account, make sure you submit all the forms. Talk to financial aid at the school you're at. If you still are confused, get a hold of your promise advocate, which you can see on your website. So you can contact them. The last thing I'm going to talk about before we get into the question and answer session is the website. So we went through a lot of stuff very quickly here tonight, all of which you can find on our website. We talked about registering your account. The account is important for a number of reasons. First of all, it has your status. It has copies of all the forms that you've submitted and that you don't have to file them somewhere and remember where they're at. The other thing it does is it shows you your current status. It will tell you how many years of eligibility you have left, how many credits you've already used, and it will also show the grades that have been reported to us. I would recommend that students check their online account at least once a semester, usually not more than two. I tell people if you're checking it weekly or something, you have a social life. So, anyway, but definitely use it to keep track of where you're at. It also has forms, so if you want to transfer to a different institution, you want to take summer school at a different institution, we have a process, so if you need more than 145 credit hours, there's a form is there as well. So it's a useful tool. It helps us keep track of you and you keep track of us. All right. I want everybody to please stay where you're at. Okay? I know you're ready to go, but there are going to be some questions here that you will wish you heard the answers to. So please stay through the question and answer period, and don't hesitate to speak up. We'll have microphones going around so you can ask this question. Before I start that, there's one last thing that I want to say specifically to the students. This is your scholarship. It is designed with a tremendous amount of flexibility and generosity. You will find very, very few scholarships out there that will give you 10 years, that will give you 145 credits, that will let you use it for certificates, trade programs, associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, that will allow you to move it around, that will allow you to start and stop. You can get a certificate, go to work for a few years, come back with your remaining eligibility, and add something else on stack. This is your scholarship. We have a lot of Promise staff, most of which are Promise alum. They know what the journey is like. What we want, what we know works best is if you are pursuing something that you're passionate about. And what our staff attempts to do is help students figure out how to translate that passion into a path through the post-secondary education process. We also know that things happen, life happens, and sometimes students have some issues that come up, family, health, emotional, and the 10-year window is very helpful for that. So if something happens and you're but do not hesitate to reach out to us. One of the things that happens, we have a lot of students who start and then stop, and we have a really hard time getting them back going, even though they have a lot of eligibility. This is a tremendous gift. We keep track of how much we pay to each scholar. And we this year had our first scholars receive for $100,000 in Thomas scholarship. This has gotten expensive when we started this team. The expense of post-secondary education has gone through the roof, and because of the Kalamazoo Promise, our families, the students, this is a tremendous opportunity. I think staff here who went to college on the Promise, once you're in those institutions, you realize what a big deal it is to have this burden taken. So, with that being said, please, if you have any questions, and it can be a question that was already answered and you just need some clarification or whatever, maybe something. Let's get started. I'll just do it. So, what can we do to help nudge some of you delinquents? No, anyway. So what we have is we have our compassionate coaches and guides. So they are there to help students with the whole transition from high school to college, including applying for the Promise, the FAFSA, applying for other scholarships. All of that, they are there to do. And you're not going to offend them by asking for that help. So please reach out, make your mother happy, and we're glad to do that. We know it's a daunting process, and with the Promise, we really have a lot of opportunity. You're born. Yeah. Well, we're okay. We got a long time. I don't want to encourage your procrastination. We have time. I will say the sooner you get things in, there are certain scholarships and decisions that colleges make, and they make those decisions early. An example, probably 10 years ago now, the University of Michigan offered free room and board, where it was $10,000 a year, or something like that, to the Kalamazoo Public School graduates who were going to go to Michigan. But the only ones who were offered that additional financing were students who had applied early. And I know there are other funds that schools have, and they make those decisions early. So if you get in early, then the chances of having those opportunities. Yeah. 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 All of of them are doing early acceptance. Okay, anybody?
Do you have supporting help?
Yes. Right here. She's at Gulf, she's at Phoenix, and with Gates.
Okay, I was wondering if I have a question.
Sure.
That,
Okay, there's a chart.
what if a child has been in KPS for the whole time, but due to health issues and COVID, the time that they can be in high school is run out and they have to take the team? Is there anything that they can do?
Yeah, great question. So what can students do to get a GED? We are thrilled about that option, but I will have a slight personal confession here. I have a daughter who has a GED and I have a son who has a PhD. So I understand what can happen. With the promise, the way we deal with GEDs is through the appeals process. So basically, if a student gets a GED instead of a diploma, we can take the appeals process. Generally speaking, the appeals committee reacts fairly favorably to that. It's much easier if you just complete your diploma, but if you have to do that, there is
My question is, what about students who used to teach at Kansas Development? And why is that not included? Some other people appeal for it, other people not.
well, so adult ed,
It's part of people, yes.
I know. So the requirements for the Kalamazoo Promise, we have three. You attend KPS K through 12. You live in the district K through 12. And you graduate with a diploma within that time. Those are the requirements. We have an appeals process for students who need to operate outside. And those decisions are made by a committee of community members. It's a small committee. It's a very generous group. And I would say 80 to 90% of appeals have been approved. But the committee's responsibility is to make sure that the integrity of the promise is maintained. The reason for the promise was to improve the public education in Kalamazoo by keeping students in the system, persisting in a reasonably stable geographic area. So that's the incentive. It is probably the loosest scholarship requirements in the country. And we have the appeals process on top of that. So, I think given what the donors are trying to do, what they've been doing, over 95% of the graduates of Kalamazoo, Central Illinois, Norris are eligible for the promise. And if you look all the way across the board, since the inception of the promise, over 90% of the graduates have been eligible to receive our promise. So,
Just a second comment on that. I understand the rules of the promise, and I'm not trying to just think that's like. A lot of the students that were my students at adult ed were people that slipped through the cracks.
yep.
So because they didn't make it through because of whatever learning disabilities or whatever happened, homelessness, I feel like that's something that the promise should consider eventually, like maybe including that.
Yeah.
It's just a.
That's why we have the appeals process. Yeah, the appeals process addresses a lot of the homeless, not the homeless, homeless security. Homelessness, we waive. We don't punish anybody for homelessness as legally defined by state and national regulation. It helps with students who have had mental health situations. We are doing a lot there already. And I appreciate your concern and your advocacy. Anybody else? Yeah, I don't, do we have a resource for that yet? No, so what we do have on our website, we have a list of all the institutions that qualify for use with the promise. And that list includes a link to those schools and their websites. Generally speaking, you want to apply as early as possible. I mean, that's really the deal. And typically, for financial aid purposes, you want to get everything in, I think, by March 1st still. But again, the sooner the better for everything. We try to get, for instance, all the appeals in December. So, you know, coaches will be reaching out to all the scholars to get them moving and get everything in. We're having these meetings now because we want to get this process.
If the student decide to take a gap year to graduation and they
Not all of them. The foundation is here at a table in the back. So when you exit, I would certainly ask them. You know, the great thing about the Kalamazoo Community Foundation and their scholarships, their website, they have an application, and the application covers all but one of their scholarships. So you can go in there, fill out one application, and check the scholarships that you want to apply to and get that done. Brought up the gap here. It's become popular. And I understand students having the desire to take some time off between high school and their post-secondary journey. Here is my caution. Statistics are against you. What we know is if students take off more than a year, their chances of being successful in their post-secondary journey drops down to, I think, less than 10%. So what we encourage students to do is, you know, pay attention to what feels right for you. But if you feel like you need to take a gap year, you're not sure what you're going to do, you can use your promise on a part-time basis at KVCC on a case-by-case basis at any of the other promise institutions. We would much rather students took a class or two during that gap year than taking it off entirely. One of the things that it can help you with is determining what exactly it is you want to study and do. So you can take a class in your field of interest and see whether, you know, you're still interested. I always said anybody who went through introductory philosophy and psychology and went on to get a degree in those fields didn't have the same professor either. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, did everybody, I'll repeat that. So the Kalamazoo Foundation has changed their online application a bit. So you don't now have to go through all the scholarships and determine which ones you want to apply for. They have questions within the application that will help them identify which scholarships the student qualifies for and will automatically submit your application to the scholarship. That's a great. That's the ringtone I have for this, okay? Any other questions?
I'm not sure, Cameron,
Yes.
he decides to leave the state.
excellent question. So, if what happens with some of our students is they may decide to go to a non-promise school out of state, or they may just move out of state after high school graduation. Your eligibility for the promise is in place for those 10 years. So, if you come back, your eligibility is still there, and you can use your promise. What we encourage all students to do before you graduate from high school is at least complete the scholarship application, because then we can lock in your eligibility. And that's particularly helpful if there was some issue within your period of enrollment with KPS to get it settled so you know what your eligibility is. The other thing, even out of state, we've had some students utilize their promise with remote learning. Now you have to be a little careful about what your address is. We will not pay out of state tuition, but a student may use their parents' address and take online classes and still get good state. Yeah. So the eligibility is whichever of three things happens first. So 10 years, 145 credit hours, or a bachelor's. So once you have a bachelor's degree, even if you've never used your promise, your eligibility for the promise is there. If you don't get a bachelor's degree and you don't have plans to get a bachelor's degree, we have students with multiple certificates. Perhaps somebody's interested in kind of a handyman kind of situation. You could get an HVAC certification, welding certification, some kind of other electrical. Or maybe you get one of those certifications you want to start your own business. You can go on and get your associate's degree in business. So there's lots and lots of options. Hey. Okay, so if you're going to move your scholarship, we need a scholarship acceptance form for any school that you're going to use your promise. And that's just done online. The scholarship acceptance form is it assures your privacy, but it also allows us to communicate with the institution that you're attending to get grades and understand your financial things. Study abroad. Excellent. So study abroad, what we do with study abroad, and a lot of our students do it, is we cover normal in-state tuition for the credits that are being studied abroad, as long as the program of study is administered by that school. So in other words, we're only going to pay a promised institution. If you're studying abroad in France, we shouldn't even know about it, frankly. The bill you get from whatever school you're at, if you're at Western, you go to France to study abroad, we will get the same kind of bill from Western that we would as if you were here to. And they will report the grades. So we've had, like I said, lots and lots of students. Another question that hasn't, you have a question? Okay, all right. Another thing, as far as how does the Kalamazoo Promise fit into a financial aid package? A lot of our students are eligible for other financial aid, particularly Pell Grants. And the Kalamazoo Promise is unusual also in that it's considered a first dollar. So the Kalamazoo Promise, institutions can apply it before any other financial aid, and they can apply it even if you're not eligible for federal financial aid. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we believe that all of our students will get the maximum amount of free financial aid that they can with that structure. The only problem that comes up, and it comes up maybe once every 5 years or so, it seems like, is some students will get 2 scholarships, the Promise and another scholarship that can only be used for tuition. If that happens with you, there's a couple things to consider. Most scholarships do not give you 145 credit hours, they don't give you 10 years. So you get a scholarship like that, you may want to use that scholarship first, and you'll have to communicate with your school about that. And then wait to use your Promise, because I think 2/3 to 75% of our students change majors. And so if you change majors, the 145 credit hours might be a problem. We used to only give 130 credit hours, and it was much more of an issue. That's a little less severe. Your question. Oh, okay. The question is about HBCUs. We are looking into the options with HBCUs. We haven't arrived at anything yet. We're talking to some of them. We're also talking to some of our local post-secondary institutions which have agreements with some of the HBCUs. So we're hopeful that we'll have something, within the next year or so. But I don't want to promise anything at this point. Yeah. The thing that I'll say about HBCUs, about any other school that isn't covered by the Promise, I encourage students to apply wherever they want to go, right? Schools are desperate for students. There's a decline in the number of students graduating from high school just because of birth rates and stuff. So institutions are in a position where they really need students. So I would encourage you to apply to the schools that you want to attend and see what they offer. If you go to a school that isn't covered by the Promise, you can come home, for instance, during the summer and take some classes at Western or KVC, whatever, and we will cover those classes. So even if you're attending a non-Promise institution during the regular school year, there are ways to get some relief from the expenses of the other students. Thanks. Yeah.
Does the campus offer internships?
Unfortunately, yes. No. We, in the presentation, we talked about some of the opportunities we have, and the Higher Promise is a new program that's been going for 2 years now. We had 75 interns around the community this past summer, with a lot of organizations in the community. We take 5 interns ourselves, and I think 3 of them are here. 4? All right. So, and of course, they're all Promise scholars, soon to be alum. And so we try to practice what we preach. 2/3 of our team are Promise scholars. The reason for the Promise is to help make Kalamazoo a thriving community. And part of that means keeping you here once you've finished your education. And we're trying to. And it's a lot of fun. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. All the Higher Promise internships are paid. Promise is always good. So what happens if you have some academic trouble? It never happens. It's a very common thing, unfortunately, for everybody. But so what we do is we look at grades every semester. And if a student's GPA falls below 2.0, we will typically give that student a probation semester. and give them an opportunity to get their grades up. We will look at both cumulative GPA and the semester GPA. So sometimes that that academic challenge is pretty significant, and it's impossible to get your cumulative GPA back to a 2.0 in just one semester. So we take it one semester at a time, and as long as students are making progress with that, we will work with it. The other thing is, after 2 consecutive semesters, the scholarship can be suspended. We have an extended probation process for students who develop a plan with part of our team, and you don't permanently lose your scholarship. So students, and if you know students in the community, young people in the community who lost their promise at some point, and they're less than 10 years away from high school graduation, have them reach out to us, because chances are we can work with them and get them going. We do that a lot, and our biggest challenge is frankly getting a hold of them so that they know they have that opportunity. So, thanks. Yeah, so with classes, typically you have a week to 2 weeks every semester to change your schedule. If a student drops below full time during that early period, they would need to contact us if they're not at ABCC and ask for a waiver on full time. If it's after the drop add period, we're still going to get billed for those credits. We will continue to pay for those credits, and what we will do is look at how many credits are actually completed. So students typically, if they mess up one class, do okay, and the other 3 or 4, they're going to be okay academically, but they will have thrown away some credits. There's a little cushion with our 145 credits, so sometimes that's not a big deal. But if it happens regularly, students, what will happen is they get to the end of their degree and they run out of credits. You know, the bad news about that is the most expensive credits from the post-secondary journey are the last ones. So that's why we try to intervene as early as we can. So we have our new offices downtown across from the Arcadia Festival site. We're very excited about that space. We have space in those facilities for students to come and study. So if you need a place to get away, get some quiet, have Wi-Fi access, you need a computer access, we have all that for students, and we'd be glad to come down. Oh, so what are our hours? Our hours currently are 8 to 5. We don't have weekend hours yet. We have talked about adding that. But yeah, if a student has requirements, have them reach out to us. We might be able to help figure out something. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm just pulling from my own experience. When I was in college, I played a baseball game, got hit in the head with a baseball, got a concussion, had to drop all my classes. What happens if something medical happens and after they communicate from classes and they have to drop concussion?
Yeah, so stuff happens in people's lives for sure. But sometimes it results in having to completely withdraw, lose all the credits that you have registered for that semester. It really, from the promise perspective, knowing that if you're already on probation, we probably would extend probation, things like that. The other thing that we would encourage you to do is reach out to the college or university and see what their hardship appeal is. A a lot of them have a process you can go back to and get a refund. And if we get refunded from the school for those credits, we'll put them back on the students. And that happens fairly frequently. And again, if students are in that situation, don't know what to do, when they log onto your account, it tells you who to contact at our office, and we can help students. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention and your questions, and good luck to everybody. Make sure you pass this information on to those who need it.
So it wasn't even like geographically in a different